I'm Jami Floyd. This is The Best Defense. Well, Justin Heyne is charged with 3 counts of capital murder for the deaths of 24-year-old Sara Buckoski, 26-year-old Benjamin Hamilton, and the couple's 5-year-old daughter, Ivory. These weren't strangers, though. They were friends, and they all shared a home. Prosecutors say it was an act of premeditated murder, but Heyne claims he was acting in self-defense. It took a panel of 9 women and 3 men just a little over 6 hours of deliberations to reach this decision.
Verdict, count 1. We, the jury, finds as follows as to the defendant in this case. A, the defendant, Justin Curtis Heyne, is guilty of first-degree premeditated murder.
And first to you, Dr. Buzz. I'm not surprised. Are you?
You know, Jami, I'm not surprised either. However, you know, they were a young family. They were an attractive family. They had a life. They were starting a life. They were productive members of our society. The jury clearly is going to be very, very sympathetic to this family that now has been annihilated by the defendant. The confliction here is how this defendant, who may have a history of mental health issues, who may have cognitive impairments, also was living with this family. This house was considered a drug house. It was under surveillance by the police. And when there are drugs involved and when there are guns involved, it does skew someone's perception. It can make them more paranoid. And those are the questions I have about this defendant. Yeah. What was going on in his emotional brain? Yeah,
all kinds of defenses that I think perhaps should have been available to him, but simply were not as a matter of law. So, Dr. Buzz, from the mental health perspective, what does distinguish this Justin Heyne from every other death-eligible defendant? What makes him different?
Well, sadly, this was a family, and these were 2 parents that invited this man to come and live with them. So right there, that probably in hindsight wasn't the best choice for these people to do, but they wanted to help this individual because this individual did have a troubled background. This person did have possibly cognitive impairments. This person did have possibly mental health issues. I say possibly because his history is somewhat unknown. We need to hear about that history. I know that his father states he went and took his son to see a psychiatrist when he was 5 years old because the defendant was suffering from attention deficit hyperactivity. And the psychiatrist felt this child should be hospitalized, that he was very problematic. What does that tell us? It tells us that children oftentimes who have problematic behaviors end up as adults with problematic behaviors. There was no intervention. We also know he was in special ed. We also know when he was in special ed that he tended to help the teacher, whether that was because he was in a position of control over the other students or he truly wanted to help the teacher run the class. We want to hear about those things. We also know he was a football player. Kind of a bad combination when you're already in special ed and you're a football player. Did you have cognitive impairments suffered from when you were playing football? Those things all have to be examined. In addition, his life in prison after 5 years, there is a psychologist who says, yes, this person may be bipolar. We need to hear about that. We need to hear about everything, Jami, and it has to be credible.
Yeah, and that's why the credibility built up in the guilt phase by the defense team is so important. They did a good job of that here, and we saw that yesterday. But Dr. Buzz, yet again, you proved to be the perfect guest for us to have with us today. Always, and certainly here in this case. And Dr. Buzz, you testify, don't you, at all phases of a trial?
Yes, I do. And we want to make that individual, we want to make the defendant sympathetic. I want to hear from his family about what they went through and what brought them to say, we need to take our 5-year-old son to see a psychiatrist. Think about the pain, the emotional pain that goes on the family, and they're concerned. We don't want to hear, though, that this child was a very aggressive child. We don't want to hear that this child tortured animals. We don't want to hear that this child beat up other children. We don't want to hear that this is a monster child. We want to hear how this child coped and what this child did well. We know he was in special ed. We know he seemed to have pervasive developmental disorders. We know that he possibly had a cognitive impairment and didn't do well in school but was trying. And we know he might have further damaged his brain by playing football. I want to be sympathetic to this person. I don't want to have fear towards this defendant. I don't want to have the jury saying, hey, this guy is a monster from childhood to adulthood. We want this guy locked up and we want to have society protected from him.
Jurors will be asked to weigh aggravating circumstances, 3 murders, against mitigating factors, reasons why Heyne should be spared the death penalty.
You will hear of a troubled life characterized by poor decisions, impulsive behavior, self-destructive behavior, drug abuse, stemming from mental illness.
Buzz, how's he doing?
Well, you know, we're looking at a child that's engaging in self-destructive behaviors, has a lot of problems with aggression and violence, and this, of course, makes a jury, this makes us as a society very uncomfortable. We've got to hear about intervention. We've got to hear about how this child was trying to cope. We've got to hear how this child was trying to do the right thing, but all these other factors got in the way. We've got to find sympathy, and we've got to be empathetic for this individual. With that, we've got to see credible doctors and psychiatrists and psychologists who can talk about this individual, and we can believe what they're saying.
Yeah, I agree. You said credibility before, Buzz. I agree with that. And Don, you said pity. We need that. So let's hope that we see both of those things as we continue. So is the defense on the right track? Is this the kind of thing they need to do? Starting first with you, Dr. Buzz.
You know, they're on the right track. I want to hear how this defendant tried to gain control over his cognitive impairments. I want to hear that in spite of having emotional impairments, this defendant was trying to gain control within his life. I don't want to hear about jail time. I don't want to hear about behavior problems. I want to hear how he was doing the right thing or attempting to do the right thing, and when interventions were successful. We want to hear good things. We want to hear how this person was trying to be in control and have power within his own life and being a productive member of society. That's what I want to hear, Jamie.
I think we're all on the same page, but it remains to be seen what the defense will do in this case, and it will all be seen tomorrow on our air. Best Defense, open court and courtside. And with that, the Best Defense will rest for the day. A very big thank you to Dr. Buzz for being with me.